What if I told you that in the Middle Ages, looking healthy was actually a social mistake? That having a tan meant you were poor, and the most beautiful women in Europe spent their mornings rubbing poison on their faces, on purpose. What did medieval people believe made someone truly beautiful? And why were they willing to lose their eyebrows, their hair, and sometimes their health to achieve it? If you've ever wondered what it really took to be considered gorgeous 1,000 years ago, you're in the right place. I'm your host, and this is Little Historical. Before we step into a world of white lead, towering hats, and forbidden blush, take a moment to subscribe and hit that like button. It helps us bring more forgotten stories to light. Now, let's travel back to a time when beauty wasn't just about looking good, it was about looking untouchable. To be beautiful in the Middle Ages, you had to first understand one unspoken truth: the sun was your enemy. Not because it would age your skin or burn your shoulders, but because its light revealed the one thing you could never afford to show: that you worked, that you labored, that your hands had ever touched a field or your back had ever bent beneath the weight of survival. A golden glow was not a mark of health, it was a confession. And so, the women of castles and manor houses embarked on a quiet, desperate pursuit of something the modern world would find unsettling. They wanted to look almost ghostly. Pale as fresh milk. Pale as the moon before a storm. Pale as if they had never once stepped outside. But achieving such a complexion required more than avoiding sunlight. It required sacrifice, secrecy, and a steady hand. In the bedchambers of noblewomen, small ceramic pots held a powder so fine it seemed to float in the air when opened. White lead. Created by corroding metal with vinegar until a crust formed, then grinding it into dust, this was the foundation of medieval beauty. Women applied it to their faces, their necks, the soft skin of their chests, smoothing it on with cloths or fingertips until they achieved a flawless, matte finish. In candlelight, they appeared luminous, almost divine, like figures stepped out of a sacred manuscript. But there was a cost written into every grain. The lead seeped in slowly, at first unnoticed. Perhaps a headache after a long feast. A slight tremor in the hand when lifting a goblet. Then the skin beneath the powder would begin to rebel. Blotches, sores, hair thinning at the temples. Yet the women kept applying, because to stop would be to admit that beauty had a price they were unwilling to pay. And they had learned long ago that the highest beauty is always dangerous. There was an intimacy to this ritual, performed behind closed doors, often in the company of a trusted maid. A shared secret. A whispered warning: asterisk more powder, the left cheek is too pink star. And in those quiet moments, a woman understood that she was painting not just her face, but her place in the world. She was declaring to every visitor, every rival, every man who might consider her fortune, that she belonged to a realm where the sun had no power over her. Her pallor was her passport. Her fragility was her armor. And if the powder eventually took her hair, her health, her years, well, that was simply the price of never being mistaken for a woman who carried water. Because in the medieval imagination, there was something almost forbidden about such deliberate transformation. A woman who controlled her own appearance too boldly risked whispers of vanity, of deception, even of darker arts. Yet still they leaned into the mirror, still they reached for the lead, still they chose, again and again, to become something otherworldly. And as we will see, the obsession with pale skin was only the beginning. Once the face was made flawless, the next step was to reshape it entirely, starting with the eyebrows and the long, slow erasure of everything that seemed too human. And so, with the face rendered pale as winter, the next transformation began, one that required not a powder, but a slow, deliberate erasure. For in the medieval ideal, a woman's beauty was not found in the natural curve of her brow or the arch of her expression. It was found in emptiness. A forehead that stretched high and smooth, uninterrupted by any trace of hair, was considered the height of elegance, a canvas upon which the gaze could rest without distraction. It spoke of intellect, of purity, of a mind lifted toward heaven rather than bent over earthly toil. And to achieve it, women were willing to endure something far more intimate than the daily dusting of lead. Behind closed doors, often by candlelight, the work began. A maid would heat small tweezers of iron or copper, passing them through flame before handing them to her mistress. Or the lady would lean back, eyes closed, while another carefully plucked each hair, one by one, from brow and temple. It was a slow, almost meditative ritual, silence broken only by the soft tug of metal against skin, the occasional sharp inhale. But plucking alone was never enough. For those who sought true perfection, the hairline itself had to be pushed back, inch by aching inch. Some used hot cloths pressed to the forehead to loosen the follicles. Others turned to depilatory creams whose recipes read like spells: quicklime, vinegar, and for the truly devoted, small amounts of arsenic. There were even formulas that called for cat dung, mixed into a paste and left to sit until the hair simply gave up its hold. There was something deeply private about this labor, a secret shared between women who understood that beauty was not a gift but a conquest. A young bride might be instructed by her mother-in-law on the proper shape of emptiness. A lady-in-waiting might exchange glances with a princess as they both winced through the same recipe. And in these quiet chambers, the boundaries between vanity and devotion blurred. To remove one's eyebrows was to become more angelic, for angels and sacred art were never shown with brows. To widen the forehead was to echo the divine. And yet, there was also a whispered knowledge that such transformation made a woman more mysterious, more unreadable. Without eyebrows, her expressions became harder to decipher. Her moods, her intentions, slipped behind a smooth, serene mask. A man gazing at her could never quite tell if she was welcoming him or judging him, whether her thoughts were innocent or laced with something far more worldly. The result, when finished, was striking. Portraits from the era show women with faces that seem to begin somewhere near the crown of the head, their eyes large and calm beneath vast expanses of pale skin. It was a look that suggested not just beauty, but control over one's body, one's pain, one's very appearance. And yet, for all the suffering endured, there remained one element of the face that could not be so easily reshaped. The hair that grew elsewhere, the long, flowing locks that framed this newly expanded forehead, would soon become its own obsession. For blonde was the color of the blessed, and the pursuit of that celestial shimmer demanded its own rituals, its own secrets, and its own price. And so, from the smooth expanse of the forehead, the gaze drifted upward, to the hair that fell like a curtain around the face, waiting to be transformed. For in the medieval imagination, hair was not merely hair. It was a statement of worth, a whisper of virtue, a shimmering declaration that a woman had been touched by something beyond the ordinary. And the most coveted shade of all was blonde. Not the pale yellow of straw, but the luminous gold of candlelight on a sacred manuscript, the color poets compared to honey, to sunlight trapped in silk, to the very radiance of the Virgin herself. To be born with such hair was to be blessed. To acquire it was to enter a silent conspiracy with nature, bending her rules through patience and secrecy. In the privacy of bedchambers, when the household had retired and only a single flame remained, women would gather the ingredients of their quiet alchemy. Saffron from distant lands, crushed into a fine dust. Chamomile flowers steeped in water until the liquid turned the color of pale amber. Honey, thick and golden, and sometimes the sharp, unmistakable scent of lye, or, in recipes whispered between trusted maids, urine, prized for its ability to lift color from even the darker strands. These mixtures were applied with cloths or fingers, worked through the hair until every length was coated, and then the woman would sit near a window, or in a patch of morning sun, waiting. It was a slow, patient magic. The sun had to be just right, the mixture had to remain for hours. And while she waited, she could not be seen. For a noblewoman caught in such a vulnerable act, hair wet, face unadorned, exposed to the elements, would have risked more than gossip. She would have risked the delicate illusion that her beauty was effortless, that she had simply been born this way. But the transformation, when complete, was worth the risk. Her hair would catch the light differently now, drawing the eye, inviting touch. And yet, for all that effort, the moment she married, her golden menere was meant to disappear. Hidden beneath veils and wimples, tucked into linen coifs or silk nets, her hair became a secret known only to her husband, and to herself. There was a strange intimacy in this concealment. What was once displayed for admiration now lay hidden against her neck, a warmth no one else could see. In public, she was modest, virtuous, her beauty contained. In private, she could release it, let it fall loose across her shoulders in the candlelit quiet of her chamber. And so, the very act of hiding became its own kind of power. But even concealed hair could be shaped, adorned, transformed. And as fashion grew more ambitious, women began to build structures atop their heads, towering shapes that would soon define not only modesty, but gravity itself. From the heights of those towering shapes, the gaze of the world turned not only to admire but to judge. For in the Middle Ages, beauty was never simply a matter of appearance, it was a matter of the soul, and the soul was always being watched. A woman who shaped her face with lead, who widened her forehead, who lightened her hair to gold, walked a razor's edge between being seen as blessed and being accused of something far darker. The very same qualities that made her desirable could, in a whisper, become evidence of her corruption. For if beauty was a gift from God, then enhancing that beauty was an act of pride. And pride, the Church taught, was the first and deadliest sin. There was a quiet terror in this contradiction. A woman could spend hours preparing her face, her hair, her garments, only to step into a hall and feel the weight of every gaze turned critical. Was she too pale? Too smooth? Did her forehead gleam with vanity rather than virtue? And what of the men who watched her? Their admiration could turn to accusation if they believed her beauty had been crafted to tempt. In sermons across Europe, priests warned that a painted woman was a deception, a trap laid for righteous men. Her blush, if too vivid, was not health but invitation. Her uncovered hair, if too golden, was not radiance but seduction. And in the shadows of these whispered judgments, a woman learned to perform not only beauty but innocence itself. This was the hidden labor that no manual ever recorded. The art of looking beautiful without seeming to try. The careful denial when complimented. Oh, it is nothing, merely the morning air, while knowing the cost in sleepless nights, in lead beneath the skin, in the slow thinning of the hair at the temples. A woman's beauty was supposed to be natural, effortless, a reflection of her pure soul. And yet, achieving that natural look required constant, secret effort. The richer the lady, the more elaborate her denials. She could not admit to using rouge, to plucking her brows, to sleeping in linen wraps to preserve her pallor. To admit such things was to confess to vanity, and vanity was the first step towards something far more dangerous. In the quiet of her chamber, alone but for a single candle, a woman might catch her own reflection and wonder, am I beautiful, or have I merely convinced them that I am? And if the illusion were to slip, if a maid spoke too freely, if a rival noticed the faint scars where eyebrows once grew, if the lead powder wore thin before the feast was over, what then? The same society that demanded she be flawless would turn on her the moment she was caught perfecting that flaw. So she learned to keep her rituals secret, her ingredients hidden, her pain unspoken. And in that secrecy, beauty became not only an art but a kind of survival. But even as she concealed her efforts, the world outside her chamber grew bolder, demanding not just beauty but spectacle. And soon, the very shape of her body would become the next frontier in the long, dangerous pursuit of perfection.